everyone to another episode of IDRYB Reacts. I am Lutch, your host, and today we are going to be talking about something very interesting, something that I've been on for a very long time, and I thought it was a relatively unique perspective, but I came across this 10-year-old TED Talk that pretty much says everything that I've been trying to share with you guys. So let's just hop right in and listen to what we've got.
One of the most common ways of dividing the world is into those who believe and those who don't, into the religious and the atheists. And for the last decade or so, it's been quite clear what being an atheist means.
And I'm sure he's going to go into this, but I just have to say at any point, whenever this comes up, that I have to make sure and do my duty to make sure and define what atheism and atheists are. So real quick, Gnosticism has to do with knowledge. Theism has to do with the belief in a god or gods. So to be agnostic means you do not know. To be atheist means without a belief in a god or gods. And so agnostic is not a halfway point. Me personally, I'm quite sure that I don't hold any beliefs in any gods. But do I know for sure that no God exists? Absolutely not. That would be ridiculous to say. That still makes me an atheist. I just need to make sure everybody understands that that is what we are working with.
Some very vocal atheists who pointed out not just that religion is wrong, but that it's ridiculous. These people, many of whom have lived in North Oxford, have argued.
That's probably either where that is, or it's a joke about Richard Dawkins, who went to Oxford.
They've argued that believing in God is akin to believing in fairies, and essentially that the whole thing is a childish game. Now, I think it's too easy. I think it's too easy to dismiss the whole of religion that way, and it's as easy as shooting fish in a barrel. And what I'd like to inaugurate today is a new way of being an atheist. If you like, a new version of atheism we could call Atheism 2.0.
Now, I hate that. That is a terrible thing. Name anything 2.0 that you use and like. Not Atheism 2.0. Let's just call it humanity.
Now, what is Atheism 2.0? Well, it starts from a very basic premise. Of course there's no God. Of course there are no deities or supernatural spirits or angels, etc.
That we can prove. There may be, but we can't prove. So we're at an impasse until there is proof that there is or there is not gods and fairies and unicorns and all that stuff.
Now let's move on. That's not the end of the story. That's the very beginning. I'm interested in a kind of constituency that thinks something along these lines. That thinks, I can't believe in any of this stuff. I can't believe in the doctrines. I don't think these doctrines are right. But, very important but, I love Christmas carols. I really like the art of Mantegna. I really like looking at old churches. I really like turning the pages of the Old Testament. Whatever it may be, you know the kind of...
If you really like the Old Testament, then you're probably pretty sick and twisted. But hey, to each their own.
Thing I'm talking about. People who are attracted to the ritualistic side, the moralistic, communal side of religion, but can't bear the doctrine. Now, until now, these people have faced rather an unpleasant choice. It's almost as though either you accept the doctrine, and then you can have all the nice stuff, or you reject the doctrine and you're living in a sort of spiritual wasteland under the guidance of CNN and Walmart. So that's a sort of tough...
And that was his dig at CNN in, I thought it was 2012, 2011. So this is over 10 years old.
Choice. I don't think we have to make that choice. I think there is an alternative. I think there are ways, and I'm being both very respectful and completely impious, of stealing from religions. If you don't believe in a religion, there's nothing wrong with picking and mixing, with taking out the best sides of religion. And for me, Atheism 2.0 is about, in both, as I say, a respectful and an impious way, going through religions and saying, what here could we use? The secular world is full of holes. We have secularized badly, I would...
Absolutely. And this, again, the heart of the problem is that people have done exactly that. They've thrown out everything to do with religion because of the dogma. And now, because they've done that so badly and left such a big hole, the new dogma has become the CNN, the CNN narrative, exactly as he predicted.
Argue. And a thorough study of religion can give us all sorts of insights into areas of life that are not going too well. And I'd like to run through a few of these today. I'd like to kick off by looking at education. Now, education is a field that the secular world really believes in. You know, when we think about how we're going to make the world a better place, we think education. That's where we put a lot of money. Education is going to give us not only commercial skills, industrial skills, it's also going to make us better people. You know,
remember, this was pre-2015, so at that time, going to college, you usually came out a better person, not a worse person.
Kind of thing of commencement addresses and graduations.
It's only half tongue-in-cheek.
Ceremonies, those lyrical claims that education, the process of education, particularly higher education, will make us into nobler and better human beings. That's a lovely idea. Interesting where it came from. You know, in the early 19th century, church attendance in Western Europe started sliding down very, very sharply, and people panicked. They asked themselves the following question. They said, where are people going to find morality? Where are they going to find guidance? And where are they going to find sources of consolation?
What was that word we were using before? Humanity. Oh, yeah.
And influential voices came up with one answer. They said culture. It's for culture that we should look for guidance, for consolation, for morality. Let's look to the plays of Shakespeare, the dialogues of Plato, the novels of Jane Austen. In there, we'll find a lot of the truths that we might previously have found in the Gospel of St. John. Now, I think that's a very beautiful idea and a very true idea. They wanted to replace scripture with culture, and that's a very plausible idea. It's also an idea that we have forgotten. You know, if you went to a top university, let's say you went to Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge, and you said, you know, I've come here because I'm in search of morality, guidance, and consolation. I want to know how to live. They would show you the way to the insane asylum. This is simply not what our grandest and best institutions.
I mean, I don't know about all that saying to the insane asylum, but definitely, you know, that's not what is focus. That's not the focus of these institutions. It's very much, I mean, it is, at least in my experience, I graduated college in 2012. So at least in my experience, you know, it very much was a grander experience intellectually in classes and everything. But mostly what I gained from college was the culture, exactly what he's talking about. I learned about new music. I learned about new schools of thought. I learned about all these different ways of living. That's really the biggest benefit that I got from college. And I don't think most of that was from the courses themselves.
Higher learning are in the business of. Why? They don't think we need it. They don't think we are in urgent need of assistance. They see us as adults, rational adults. What we need is information, we need data, we don't need help. Now, religions start from a very different place indeed. All religions, all major religions at various points call us children. And like children, they believe that we are in severe need of assistance. We're only just holding it together.
Now, again, there's a very, very good question about, hold on. A very good question about how much weight does that hold to, you know, talking about bringing, treating people as if they are helpless versus treating people as if they are capable. And of course, you can't just, you know, paint the whole thing with a broad brush. There's some people who need help in some areas and some people who are good. It's not that simple. But the point is, what's your starting point? What's your assumption? What is the baseline that you have for, okay, this is how people are in the world, so this is what we need to address. Yes, there's going to be anomalies, but we need to understand where we're coming from, where we're starting, if we are going to you know, do anything better than that.
That's just me, maybe you. But anyway, we're only just holding it together, and we need help. Of course we need help. And so we need guidance, and we need didactic learning. You know, in the 18th century in the UK,
To teach particularly having moral structure. Oh, okay. So it just means, okay, got it. Boom. That's how we learn. Moving on.
The greatest need help. And so just me, maybe you. But anyway, we're only just holding it together, and we need help. Of course we need help. And so we need guidance, and we need didactic learning. You know, in the 18th century in the UK, the greatest religious preacher was a man called John Wesley, who went.
Sorry, do you guys do that? If you're listening or to something or reading something and there's something you don't miss, definitely do that if you don't do that. It took us 10 seconds to do that, but that sentence is something that I would have loved to have known that word before. And now that I do know it, not only do I understand what we're watching, but I have a better way to express myself. So if you don't know what's going on, learn. There's nothing wrong with not knowing everything.
Up and down this country, delivering sermons, advising people how they could live. He delivered sermons on the duties of parents to their children and children to their parents, the duties of the rich to the poor and the poor to the rich. He was trying to tell people how they should live through the medium of sermons, the classic medium of delivery of religions. Now, we've given up with the idea of sermons. If you said to a modern liberal individualist, hey, how about a sermon? They go, no, I don't need one of those. I'm an independent individual person. What's the difference between...
And he's getting to it right now. He's getting to it right. He's getting to it right now. This is the thing that I'm always talking about. This semantic obfuscation that we see from the authoritarian establishment side. Whatever, I saw this video before, don't remember it by heart, but he's right. If you came up to me and said, that we needed a sermon or that I needed to go listen to a sermon, I would take that offensively. I would take that in the same way as you saying like, oh, I'll pray for you, honey. Where, not like, if you're an atheist, not everybody who says they're praying for you really means that they're praying for you. They're praying that you'll get better. There's nothing wrong with me. So, that definitely would be offensive, but that's a great point that a sermon is a loaded word. So let's see where he goes with it.
Between a sermon and our modern secular mode of delivery, the lecture. Well, a sermon wants to change your life, and a lecture wants to give you a bit of information. And I think we need to get back to that sermon tradition. The tradition of sermonizing is hugely valuable because we are in need of guidance, morality, and consolation, and religions know that. Another point about education. We tend to believe in the modern secular world that if you tell someone something once, they'll remember it. Sit them in a classroom, tell them about Plato at the age of 20, send them out into a career in management consultancy for 40 years, and that lesson will stick with them. Religions go nonsense. You need to keep repeating the lesson 10 times a day. So get on your knees and repeat it. That's what all religions tell us. Get on your knees and repeat it 10 or 20 or 15 times a day. Otherwise, our minds are like sieves. So religions are cultures of repetition. They circle the great truths again and again and again. We associate repetition.
And that, another good point here is that it's almost like, the things that really matter, especially in an age where there's just so much stuff. There's stuff to do, there's stuff to see, there's stuff to watch, there's stuff to listen to. I mean, there's just always stuff to do. It can be very easy to live in that fluid way where you're not really taking anything to heart. And it does seem like a large swath of, at least my peers, don't really seem to have a value system. And I'm not saying that we should be writing down, our whatever values they are. And, I got in trouble for stuff and had to write lines when I was a kid. And I had to write, I will not lie to mom 100 times on a piece of paper. I'm not saying we need to do that, but taking time to focus on the things that we actually do want to highlight in our society can't possibly be a bad thing, right? Like, what would be the negative to that? I don't think there is one.
Give us the new, we're always saying. The new is better than the old. If I said to you, okay, we're not going to have new TED, we're just going to run through all the old ones and watch them 5 times because they're so true. We're going to watch Elizabeth Gilbert 5 times because what she says is so clever. You feel cheated. Not so if you're adopting a religious mindset. The other thing that religions do is to arrange time. All the major religions give us calendars. What is a calendar? A calendar is a way of making sure that across the year you will bump into certain very important ideas. In the Catholic chronology, Catholic calendar, at the end of March you will think about Saint Jerome and his qualities of humility and goodness and his generosity to the poor. You won't do that by accident. You will do that because you are guided to do that. Now we don't think that way. In the secular world, we think if an idea is important, I'll bump into it. I'll just come across.
That's a great point, because we going back to the idea that we supplement this spirituality with just knowledge. And again, what did I start with? Atheism and agnosticism, or Gnosticism and theism. They're not the same thing. And so adding more things that isn't going to fulfill you in the same way that having a religion is going to do. But that does not mean that you need a dogma in order to do it. You just need to be spiritually open, and I'm sure he's going to get into that. So
nonsense, says the religious worldview. Religious worldview says we need calendars, we need to structure time, we need to synchronize encounters. This comes across also in the way in which religions set up rituals around important feelings. Take the moon. It's really important to look at the moon. When you look at the moon, you think I'm really small, what are my problems, sets things in perspective, etc., etc. We should all look at the moon a bit more often. We don't.
I thought he was going to say, take the moon, please. Like the old take my wife joke.
Why don't we? Well, there's nothing to tell us, look at the moon. But if you're a Zen Buddhist in the middle of September, you will be ordered out of your home, made to stand on a canonical platform, and made to celebrate the festival of Tsukimi, where you will be given poems to read in honor of the moon and the passage of time and the frailty of life that it should remind us of. You'll be handed rice cakes, and the moon and the reflection on the moon will have a secure place in your heart. That's very good. The other thing that religions are really aware of is speak well. I'm not doing a very good job of this here, but oratory. Oratory is absolutely key to religions. You know, in the secular world, you can come through the university system and be a lousy speaker.
Anybody notice that he did not get a laugh on that, which is just chef's kiss. That's the kind of stuff that is, you know, it's, I mean, it's, I paused it as a joke. But think about what he said. He said that in religion, they're very good at speaking well. You know, talking about, you know, especially think of your Joel Osteens and coming up to these mega churches and stuff. It's like they're very good at getting you excited about what it is. And he's here talking about an alternative to that. And he makes a joke that he's not doing it very well. And nobody gets the joke. I don't know. I thought that was funny.
And still have a great career. But the religious world doesn't think that way. What you're saying needs to be backed up by a really convincing way of saying it. So if you go to an African-American Pentecostalist church in the American South and you listen to how they talk, my goodness, they talk well. You know, after every convincing point, people will go, amen, amen, amen. You know, at the end of a really rousing paragraph, they'll all stand up and they'll go, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Christ, thank you, Savior. You know, if we were doing it like they do it, let's not do it, but if we were to do it, you know, I would tell you something like, culture should replace scripture, and you would go, amen, 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 and at the end of my talk, you would all stand up and you would go, thank you, Plato, thank you, Shakespeare, thank you, Jane Austen. And we.
That's great. And, you know, again, coming back to this same point of not throwing out all of the cultural values that come with religion just because we've gotten rid of the dogma. That's not really something I thought about. And you know, it almost seems, now from the outside, it almost seems cult-like when you see people not so much singing, not so much the hymns, because that's a pretty ubiquitous part of humanity. We all like music, but especially the chanting and the reciting prayers. It's very weird. But the idea that what's his name, Alan de Botton. So again, you guys know I'm terrible with names. The point that he's making is that if that weren't so weird, and we just replaced chanting this dogma with talking about the values that we hold, then, you know, we'd be in a little bit better of a position. Now, I kind of feel like I'm doing good on that front, considering you're watching me, but, you know, maybe there's something else you could be doing.
Oh,
keep it.
Rhythm, going. All right, we're getting there. The other thing that religions know is we're not just brains, we are also bodies. And when they teach us a lesson, they do it via the body. So, for example, take the Jewish idea of forgiveness. Jews are very interested in forgiveness and how we should start anew and start afresh. They don't just deliver us sermons on this, they don't just give us books or words about it, they tell us to have a bath. So in Orthodox Jewish communities, every Friday you go to a mikveh. You immerse yourself in the water, and a physical action backs up a philosophical idea. We don't tend to do that. Our ideas are in one area, and our behavior with our bodies are another. Religions are fascinating in the way they try and combine the two. Let's look at art now. Now, art is something that in the secular world we think very highly of. We think art is really, really important. A lot of our surplus wealth goes towards museums, etc. We sometimes hear it said that museums are our new cathedrals or our new churches. You've heard that saying. Now, I think that the potential is there, but we've completely let ourselves down. And the reason we've let ourselves down is that we're not properly studying how religions handle art. You know, there are two really bad ideas that are hovering in the modern world that inhibit our capacity to draw strength from art. The first idea is that art should be for art's sake. A ridiculous idea. An idea that
art should be art for art's sake as a ridiculous idea. Again, I did watch this before, so I have some idea of where he's going, in the sense that he's saying, you know, I mean, I'll let him speak, but that the point that art for art's sake, you know, the idea is that it should just be open expression, and it shouldn't be about necessarily a message. And in the context of what he's saying of, you know, take you know, have the look at how religion handles art, and then comparing it to this art for art's sake, I definitely agree that we need more didactic art. But I don't think that needs to impede that art that is in that art for art's sake space. I think that space can, I think that's the beauty of leaving religion behind, is that we can have both. In the religious context, you're not just going to have a picture of anything. I mean, it was mainly, I would guess, because of the time that it took. You know, not everybody's not just snapping selfies and everything. But that idea juxtaposed with the notion that everything has to have a direct message, and there can't just be a free expression of feeling. I think I don't know if it's Debatin's point here, but it certainly is my point that if we are to let go of the dichotomy of religion or no religion and get rid of the dogma and keep the values, there's space for the art that drives humanity forward, as well as that art that's just there. And it's not hurting anybody. It's not doing anything. It's just existing, and it's making the artist feel better. There's space for both when you're not stuck to a dogma.
Art should live in a hermetic bubble and should not try and do anything with this troubled world. I couldn't disagree more. The other thing that we believe is that art shouldn't explain itself. That artists shouldn't say what they're up to, because if they said it, it might destroy the spell, and we might be, we might find it too easy. That's why a very common feeling when you're in a museum, let's admit it, is I don't know what this is about. But if we're serious people, we don't admit to that. But that feeling of puzzlement is struck.
And again, I do get that. But I would just say, yeah, I think the beauty of what he is, I guess what I'm proposing after, this is old, but all right. I guess the beauty of what we are proposing here is that you can have both. And this contemporary modern art thing doesn't have to be something that's bad. It can just be something that's additional
to contemporary art. Now, religions have a much saner attitude to art. They have no trouble telling us what art is about. Art is about two things in all the major faiths. Firstly, it's trying to remind you of what there is to love. And secondly, it's trying to remind you of what there is to fear and to hate. And that's what art is. Art is a visceral encounter with the most important ideas of your faith. So as you walk around a church, or a mosque or a cathedral, what you're trying to imbibe, what you're imbibing is through your eyes, through your senses, truths that have otherwise come to you through your minds.
And I'm sure you've heard, whether they're atheists, out atheists, or just people who aren't very religious, talk about how cathedrals are beautiful, and going to Rome and looking at the art there, and just religious art in general. People appreciate that stuff, and it's a shame that the assumption is that if you're an atheist, that you don't appreciate those things and you don't have space in your heart for those types of experiences, and that's just not the case.
Essentially, it's propaganda. Rembrandt is a propagandist in the Christian view. Now, the word propaganda sets off alarm bells. We think of Hitler, we think of Stalin. Don't necessarily. Propaganda is a manner of being didactic in honor of something.
Didactic, we know what that means.
And if that thing is good, there's no problem with it at all. My view is that museums should take a leaf out of the book of religions, and they should make sure that when you walk into a museum, if I was a museum curator, I would make a room for love, a room for generosity, a room, all works of art are talking to us about things. And if we were able to arrange spaces where we could come across works, where we would be told, use these works of art to cement these ideas in your mind, we would get a lot more out of art. Art would pick up the duty that it used to have and that we've neglected because of certain misfounded ideas. Art should be one of the tools by which we improve our society. Art should be didactic.
I mean, I don't know about the laughter room, the love room, and all that thing. I think that, but I think that the underlying notion that he's getting at is very, very interesting, and something I haven't heard before. Well, I mean, I heard it the last time I watched it, but clearly that part didn't stick. And I don't know how realistic that is because of how different love is to each of us. What makes us laugh is very different and all that kind of stuff. But again, the idea that we have a place to come together and celebrate the things that are important to us, that's what church is for religious people. So why not have that for, and again, it's not saying that religious people can't go to the museum. It's just like the other video I did with the football coach who was praying on the field. He wasn't saying that you do have to pray or you don't have to pray, or you have to watch me pray or you can't watch me pray. He was just doing his thing. And so in a world where we have atheism 2.0, or humanity is all I'd like to refer to it, we are sensitive to those things. And we see that, oh, okay, I think some of these religious ideas are very silly, but that guy obviously doesn't. So he should have the freedom and the liberty to go and enjoy that and express that, as long as he's not hurting anyone or proselytizing anyone. Why should it be an issue? Art should be didactic.
Let's think of something else. The people in the modern world, in the secular world, who are interested in matters of the spirit, in matters of the mind, in higher soul-like concerns, tend to be isolated individuals. They're poets, they're philosophers, they're photographers, they're filmmakers, and they tend to be on their own. They are cottage industries. They are vulnerable single people. And they get depressed and they get sad on their own. And they don't really change much. Now, think about religions. Think about organized religions. What do organized religions do? They group together. They form institutions. And that has all sorts of advantages.
And again, you might think that, you know, I'm not the strictest libertarian, but as in general, a very anti-establishment person, you might think of me as somebody who hears the word institution and just like with the propaganda, that alarm bells would go off. But that's not the case, because an institution, I think the difference between an institution and an establishment is that top-down versus bottom-up. An institution is something that's built, as opposed to establishment is, I guess, not that which decrees. It may not be a perfect analogy, but you know what I mean.
First of all, scale, might. The Catholic Church pulled in $97 billion last year, according to the Wall Street Journal. These are massive machines. They're collaborative, they're branded, they're multinational, and they're highly disciplined. These are all very good qualities. We recognize them in relation to corporations, and corporations are very like religions in many ways, except they're right down at the bottom of the pyramid of needs. They're selling us shoes and cars, whereas the people who are selling us the higher stuff, the therapists, the poets, are on their own, and they have no power, they have no might. So religions are the foremost example of an institution that is fighting for the things of the mind. Now, we may not agree with what religions are trying to teach us, but we can admire the institutional way in which they're doing it. Agree with what religions, foremost example of an institution that is fighting for the things of the mind. Now, we may not agree with what religions are trying to teach us, but we can admire the institutional way in which they're doing it. Books alone, books written by lone individuals, are not going to change anything. We need to group together. If you want to change the world, you have to group together, you have to be collaborative, and that's what religions do. They are multinational, as I say, they are branded, they have a clear identity, so they don't get lost in a busy world. That's something we can learn from. I want to conclude. Really what I want to say is, for many of you who are operating in a range of different fields, there is something to learn from the example of religion, even if you don't believe any of it. If you're involved in anything that's communal, that involves lots of people getting together, there are things for you in religion. If you're involved, say, in the travel industry, in any way, look at pilgrimage. Look very closely at pilgrimage. We haven't begun to scratch the surface of what travel could be, because we haven't looked at what religions do with travel. If you're in the art world, look at the example of what religions are doing with art. And if you're an educator in any way, again, look at how religions...
He's almost done, and a guy comes in at the end, so I just want to hear that part. But, you know, the point that he is making about finding the aspect of your life and your corner of the world that you can implement this type of thinking, where you're not forcing anybody to do anything. You're living by example. You're leading the way of, hey, I live this way and I'm happy and I'm successful and I'm fulfilled. Then other people can see that, and other people can learn to do that as well. So let's just finish this up and
are spreading ideas. You may not agree with the ideas, but my goodness, they're highly effective mechanisms for doing so. So really my concluding point is, you may not agree with religion, but at the end of the day, religions are so subtle, so complicated, so intelligent in many ways, that they're not fit to be abandoned to the religious alone. They're for all of us. Thank you very much.
Some quarters. So this is actually a courageous thought, because you're kind of setting up yourself in some ways to be ridiculed in some quarters.
You can get shot by both sides. You can get shot by the hard-headed atheists, and you can get shot by those who fully believe.
Incoming missiles from North Oxford at any moment.
Indeed.
I'm sure this. But you left out one aspect of religion that a lot of people might say your agenda could borrow from, which is this sense that's actually probably the most important thing for anyone who's religious, of spiritual experience, of some kind of connection with something that's big.
Before he goes, I just want to give my thoughts and say that I am a very spiritual person. And I don't like saying that, because people who are not very, or seemingly not very spiritual, like to use that term. And it's a very amorphous term. It doesn't really mean a lot. It just kind of, it's kind of a placeholder. And but I do think it's important that we do the things that we're talking about in this video to give more life to that experience. And instead of just having that word spiritual, we can dive into that more and have more of it and talk more about it, learn more about it, and we can see how we can recreate these things in a secular context. And again, that doesn't mean that we need to take away religion from anybody. It just means that we need to add more for people like myself who are very strongly valued, and I have my morals, I have all of that stuff, and I have a very strong desire to be spiritually fulfilled. And I get that from learning, from talking with other people, from experiencing music, all the art, as he was talking about. There's a lot of things that can bring that type of awe, hence the Awe Really podcast, my last show. Check out some old episodes right on this channel. We don't need the dogma and everything that you think you're going to miss without it. I promise you, it's still there. It's still there. I don't remember exactly what he's about to say, but I do remember that he's saying something along the lines of what I do believe. So I just wanted to hop in really quick, but just pretend to be an atheist for a day. Just pretend and see how much it does or it doesn't affect your thinking. I guarantee you're going to realize that a lot of what you feel is your spirituality and your what comes from your faith is exactly what I've been saying, is not this atheism 2.0. It's just your humanity. That's it. It's your humanity.
Than you are. Is there any room for that experience in atheism 2.0?
Absolutely. I, like many of you, meet people who say things like, but isn't there something bigger than us, something else? And I say, of course. And they say, so aren't you sort of religious? And I go, no. Why does that sense of mystery, that sense of the dizzying scale of the universe, need to be accompanied by a mystical feeling? Science and just observation gives us that feeling without it. So I don't feel the need. The universe is large and we are tiny, without the need for a further religious superstructure. So one can have so-called spiritual moments without belief in the spirit.
Or even if you do believe in the spirit, I'm agnostic on whether the spirit exists outside of the body. I don't think that there is something that does exist that I would call a spirit. But then again, I don't necessarily know what consciousness is, and if there is a thing that is consciousness, or if that's more of an idea and experience. So, the point is, it goes no matter what you believe.
Actually, let me just ask a question. How many people here would say that religion is important to them? Is there an equivalent process by which there's a sort of bridge between what you're talking about and what you would say to them?
I would say that there are many, many gaps in secular life, and these can be plugged. It's not.
And again, most atheists, or any honest atheist, will be happy to tell you that, as our speaker here has said, that accepting or coming to your own belief or non-belief in a god or gods, coming to that place where you say, okay, I don't think this is a thing. That's the starting point, not the ending point for finding spirituality. If you're going down that road and you're not going to have a dogma or a whatever, a god or whatever you want to call it, then the journey to find the answers that you're looking for only begin once you realize that this book of quote unquote answers that's been passed down aren't actually the answers that you're looking for.
Not as they're trying to suggest, it's not as though either you have religion and then you have to accept all sorts of things, or you don't have religion and then you're cut off from all these very good things. It's so sad that we constantly say, I don't believe, so I can't have community, so I'm cut off from morality, so I can't go on a pilgrimage. One wants to say nonsense, why not? And that's really the spirit of my talk. There's so much we can absorb. Atheism shouldn't cut itself off from the rich sources of religion.
I mean, it is true that there's plenty of people in the tech community who are atheists, but probably most people in the community certainly don't think that religion is going away anytime soon, and want to find the language to have a constructive dialogue and feel like we can actually talk to each other and at least share some things in common. Are we foolish to be optimistic about the possibility of a world where, instead of religion being the great rallying cry of divide and war, that there could be bridging?
No, we need to be polite about differences. Politeness is a much overlooked virtue. It's seen as hypocrisy. But we need to get to a stage when you're an atheist and someone says, well, I did pray the other day. You politely ignore it. You move on.
That's a huge point too. I was very guilty early on in my journey to atheism of being that typical militant, angry atheist dude who thought I had to tell everybody what's what and all of that stuff. I now know that it has a lot to do with feeling like I was lied to by people that I trust, including my parents, including my priests, including school, whether it was regular school teachers or Sunday school teachers, camp counselors, all this kind of stuff. Religion was fed to me. I was indoctrinated, and so coming out of that, yeah, I was a little bit angry, and I didn't take it the best way. And so when somebody would say something like that, something innocuous, like, "Oh, I'll pray for you," in the innocuous way, then I would still get offended. And so that still has a hangover effect now. As I still want to but that's my issue. That's not for them to deal with. I do think they're wrong, but it's my responsibility to be able to handle hearing ideas that I don't agree with, and that's part of the growth and journey that we're talking about here, is that you're not just handed a book of answers. You have to go out there and find them. And I think that if people were a little bit more aware of the fact that there was work to be done, that we don't just get the answer book. Even if somebody gives you an answer book, even in religious circles, they're going to tell you that even if you believe in the Bible, it's not like you can just put the Bible next to you and your life is great. You still have work to do. You have to work through the life that you live. We all have trials and tribulations, and the idea is that we don't have to cling to this one thing, that we can see things differently and still care about the same values. We can all care about humanity flourishing. We can all care about not harming others. We can all care about helping those who are less fortunate than us. All of these things have nothing to do with dogma. Nothing. So this is a little spicy bit of video. I don't know how many of you are necessarily going to agree or agree. That's, I don't know how many of you are going to agree or disagree, but please do let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know, what did you think of the bedroom setup? I'm a little lazy today and feel like setting up the studio downstairs, so I'll just prop this up and through my computer up here. I can definitely do a lot more stuff if I don't have to get everything set up every time I want to do a video. So you let me know, what did you think of this? I really do want to do more of these videos and share more of this kind of stuff with you. So that's me. That's Atheism 2.0, or again, as I'm calling it, humanity. I think what Alan de Botton was talking about was sheer humanity. And I think if we look at religion and we look at the values that we find in religion that we want people to embody, whether or not they believe, I think we can agree to call that humanity. Yes? No? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for checking out this video. Don't forget to follow me at IDRYBlutch on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. If you really enjoyed it, there's some important links in the description. I would really love if you could help out the channel. And even if you don't want to do that, it is free to comment, like, and subscribe and share. Share this with somebody who, maybe isn't sure what's going on with their religion. Share this with that angry atheist that you know, and let them realize that, they're not the only one. It's a little bit disheartening that this is over 10 years old and we're still kind of in a dogmatic world, but we're not really as much of in as much of a religious world as we were at that time. So it's a little bit bittersweet. I wish we were a little bit further on as a species. I wish humanity was a little bit further on. But I think from where we were back in 2011, more and more people, knowingly or unknowingly, are starting to take on this type of approach to the world and this type of perspective. And I just hope we can see more of it. Until next time, we are out of here. Peace.